Guten Tag und willkommen zu dem nächsten Video in der Serie Grammatik-Wiederholung. Heute sprechen wir über Adjektivendungen, Komparativ und Superlativ. So adjective endings, comparative, and superlatives. So adjective endings. A lot of times as German learners coming from English, when we start to learn about all the different endings, they get a little bit confusing to us, and sometimes you get them confused with our der word endings, are like Reese, Nisi, Mr. Man, Sir, that we looked at when we looked at our cases in the last video. So hopefully this will clear it up. So basically there's a couple of simple categories here for adjective endings. And the first category is if you have an adjective and it's preceded by an article, a der word, or an ein word. So if there's some sort of article-like word in front of the adjective. If that's the case, then your adjective ending is going to actually just follow suit based on what that is. So if you have any kind of article-like word, whether it's a der word, an ein word, if it's original and it shows the gender of whatever the noun is that's coming up, then the adjective only takes an E ending. And I always tell students to remember that this is because the article already showed the gender. So the adjective doesn't have to. It can just take an E. So examples here. Der schwarze Kuli. Der is original for the word Kuli, and it shows that it's masculine. So just have an E. Die kleine Katze. Die is original, shows that it's feminine. So just have an E. Das lange Buch. Das is original for Buch, shows that it's neuter. So just have an E. But what if it's original and it does not show the gender? So the times when that would happen would be like if you had the word ein, because it could be either masculine or neuter, the word mein, dein, any of those possessives or kein that doesn't have an ending, because then it could either be masculine or neuter, and so just looking at the noun phrase, you're not sure, 100% sure what the gender is. So your adjective is going to take either an ER to show that it's masculine or an ES to show that it's neuter. So example, ein schwarzer Kuli. Because ein with Kuli, if you didn't know what gender Kuli was, you wouldn't know if it's masculine or neuter just looking at the ein. You have to put ER to show that Kuli is masculine. And then ein langes Buch, same thing. You have to put the ES though to show that Buch is neuter. Now, some students ask at this point, but what if you see, ein being used as a direct object, then you know that it has to be neuter, because if it were masculine, it would be einen. Well, when you're looking at your adjective endings and following these rules here, only look at just the noun phrase. You're not looking at the whole context of the sentence and trying to figure out the case and all of that to determine whether it would or not, would be neuter or masculine or not based on that. So here you're really just looking from the article-like word to the noun, and that's it. Okay, but what if you have, and this is a lot of the time in German, as we saw in our last video with the cases, what if you have a changed article word? So if you have a changed article word, either it's changed for the case or it's changed for plural, then any adjectives following that are going to take an en ending. And this happens a lot of the time. So just a couple examples here. Einen schwarzen Kuli. If we had ein being changed to einen, because maybe it's a direct object or something, that's not an original article. That is changed. So we have en. Even die. A lot of times people look at die and think, well, that's original, der, die, das. But if we had die for plural, then that's not technically the original article. So die Katzen for plural would be die kleinen Katzen. And then, of course, if we had dem langen Buch, dem is also not original. It's changed. So we have en. So those are the questions you're going to ask yourself. If you do have an article-like word, is it original or is it changed? And if it is original, does it show the gender or does it not show the gender? But then what if you don't have any article-like word at all? It's unpreceded. If that's the case, and you just have an adjective in front of a noun, but no article-like word at all, then the adjective is just going to act like the article would. It's going to take the der word ending to show the gender in the case. So that's where, from the last video, our Reese, Nisi, Mr. Man, Sir comes in. But you see that right here, it's not Sir. We have these ENs here. So this is a little Ausnahme exception, where the genitive would take an EN instead of an S. But this I wouldn't worry too much about, because really it's incredibly rare to have that happen. So usually we do have an article-like word, but sometimes when you're talking about food and drink, you don't, and then in plural forms, a lot of times you don't have an article-like word. So examples, ich trinke kaltes Wasser. This here is just showing us that it's das Wasser here. Trinkt grünen Tee. It would be den Tee, so we're having the en there. Sie trägt neue Schuhe. It would be die Schuhe, so we have an e there. And then ich habe keine Ahnung. It would be die Ahnung, so we have an e there. Now there are some special adjectives to watch out for. So viel and wenig, when they're being used in singular form, they don't take an ending at all. Also watch out that we have a lot of indefinite adjectives, andere, eigene, mehrere, viele, wenige. They're all plural, but they act like any other adjectives in a series. So they are not articles, they are adjectives, and anything that comes after them is still just going to follow suit. Alle and beide, however, even though they are indefinite adjectives, they act like they are plural articles. So consider alle and beide to be changed articles instead of adjectives for these purposes, and anything that comes after them is going to take an en ending. So a couple of examples here. Ich habe viel Zeit. Even though Zeit is feminine, we don't have any kind of ending being added to viel. Aber nur wenig Geld, even though Geld is neuter, we're not having to add anything to wenig. Viel and wenig, if they're singular, don't get anything added to them. But then here in the plural, ich habe viele kleine Aufgaben zu tun. I have many small tasks to do. We just see e's on both of these as if it's just a list of adjectives that are not preceded by any kind of article. But then with alle, it acts like it is an article. If you think of it as it being a plural changed article, we have alle großen. We have to have the en ending counting this as a changed article. So alle großen Aufgaben wurden schon getan. Okay. So das erweiterte Attribut is an extended modifier. We do have some extended modifiers in English, but in German you can use them a lot more broadly. So instead of using relative clauses, you can oftentimes take a bunch of information and just plug it in as an extended modifier. So you can use participles, so past participles or present participles like ing verbs, and use those as adjectives or adverbs in front of a noun. So the way you do it is you just take the past participle and slap an adjective ending on it if it's in front of a noun, and that's really all you have to do. So examples, Beispiele. Das eingeschlafene Kind lag auf dem Sofa. This would be the fallen asleep child laid on the sofa. Wir haben den gebackenen Kuchen gegessen. We have eaten the baked cake. And we know that baked is gebacken. We're just adding the en there because we had a changed article. Das gut geschriebene Buch hat einen Preis gewonnen. The well-written book won a prize. So das is original, already shows gender. So we're just adding an e ending to geschrieben. We know geschrieben is written, so you're just adding that to written. Der halb gegessene Keks ist auf den Boden gefallen. The half-eaten cookie fell on the floor. And so gegessen we know is eaten. And because der is original and shows gender, we're just adding an e. So what would the newly purchased car be? Think about that for a second. It would be das neu gekaufte Auto. So gekauft is purchased or bought. And we're just putting an e ending on there because das is original and shows the gender. So then using a present participle, an ing verb as an adjective, you're just going to have your present participle, which would be the stem of the verb with an end ending to make it an ing or present participle verb. And then you're going to add your adjective ending to that if it is in front of a noun. So, for instance, ein gut schmeckendes Brot. So schmeckend is tasting. So ein gut schmeckendes Brot is auf dem Teller. A good tasting bread is on the plate. Ein here is original for Brot, but it does not necessarily tell us the gender. So we have to tell the gender by putting an es, that Brot is neuter. So it's a good tasting bread. Das schreiende Baby hat die schlafenden Nachbarn geweckt. This is the screaming baby or the crying baby woke the neighbors or the sleeping neighbors. So the screaming baby here, schreiend is screaming. Since das is original and shows gender, we just add an e to our adjective. And then die schlafenden Nachbarn. Die Nachbarn is the neighbors. Since this is die for plural, it's actually considered to be changed. So we have an en. Das schwer zu kochende Gericht. Schmeckte super. That'd be the difficult to cook dish tasted great. This one's a little bit weird for us in English because we wouldn't think of this as a present participle, but in German it is. And so this is where you can kind of use extended modifiers in different ways in German from in English. We again see das is original, shows gender, and we're just putting an E. So what do you think the dancing bear would be? All right, it's das tanzende Bär. So tanzend being the dancing part, and then the E ending because das is original and shows the gender. Okay, so you can also just use an adjective as a noun. And the way you do that is just to put the exact same adjective ending on it as you usually would based on the rules we've just covered, and then just capitalize it. So a lot of times in English we say things like the last one, the first one, the big one, the small one, the brown one, the red one, whatever. In German, you don't ever need the word one in those situations. You're just going to use the adjective as a noun. So the last one, depending on what it is, could be der letzte, die letzte, or das letzte, based on specifically what it is and what the gender of that thing would be. And then obviously it could change into den letzten or dem letzten if it were in a different case. And then if you were saying something like a big one, that could be ein grosser, ein grosses, or eine grosse, or if it's in a different case, einen grossen. So it kind of depends on what the gender of the thing you're actually talking about is, and you can match that up but with your articles. But your adjective ending, remember, is going to be based on what the information your article is already giving. So for instance, with ein not having told us what the gender is yet, we have to tell it with er, es. But eine has already told us the gender, so we just put an E. And then if we had einen, that's changed, en. Okay, so let's try this out. And I'm just going to kind of talk us through a few of these. So, wie sagt man das? I'm wearing a pink sweater, a gold necklace, and brown boots. So we have to figure out what endings are going to go on these adjectives. So, ich trage einen. Okay, so think, is einen original or changed? It's changed. So we should have en. Eine, is that original or changed? It's original. Is it showing us the gender or not? It is, because that can only be feminine. So E. And then brown, and then we have Stiefel. Well, Stiefel here is plural. So do we have any kind of article at all? We don't. So what article would go there if we did have one? Well, since Stiefel is plural, it would be die. So we just mimic that by putting the E. Okay, he likes the new book but hates the new movie. Mag das, okay, das. Original or changed? It's original. Does it show the gender or not? It does. It can only be neuter. So das neue Buch. Aber hast den, okay, stop here. Is it original or changed? It's changed. Does it show? We actually don't even need to ask that question, do we? If it's changed, what do we always put? En. The barking dog plays outside all day. Little side note here, throwing this in to remind y'all that all day is not actually all day. In German, they say the whole day. Der bellend, der, is it original or changed? It's original. Does it show us the gender? Yes. So, der bellende Hund. Spielt den, okay, den, is it original or changed? It's changed. So, en. Den ganzen Tag draußen. And I also wanted to draw attention to the erweiterte Attribut here, your extended modifier, bellend here being barking, ing verb. The famous restaurant serves perfectly grilled steaks with sizzling onions. Okay, so here, whoops, you can kind of see the answers here. Das berühmt Restaurant. So we need to figure out what goes on the end of berühmt. Das, is it original or changed? Original. Does it show us the gender? Yes. So das berühmte Restaurant, serviert, perfekt, gegrillt. Here we've got another extended modifier. So grilled. Do we have any kind of article-like word here? We do not, but steaks here is plural, so what would go there would be die. So, gegrillte steaks. Mit, now here, we have Zwiebeln and that's plural, but again, we don't see any kind of article-like word. Now the mit here is one of our dative prepositions, so dative plural, what article would go there? Dative plural would be den, so we have brutzelnden Zwiebeln for the sizzling onions. Okay, so now moving into Komparativ und Superlativ. So if you are making a comparative in German, it's very similar to in English. We're just going to add an ER. The only difference is that in German, if it's a single syllable, you're also going to add an umlaut if you have a root vowel of O, A, or U that it's easy to add an umlaut to. So zum Beispiel bequem, comfortable. You could say, diese Schuhe sind bequemer als die anderen Schuhen. They're more comfortable than the other shoes. And notice in English, I had to say more comfortable. I couldn't say comfortabler. But in German, you can always just add an ER. If, however, it's preceding a noun, then it acts like any other adjective in front of a noun, and it's going to have to get an adjective ending added as well. So, for instance, kurz, you could say, wir haben ein kürzeres Wochenende diesmal, and that's a shorter. So kürzer is your regular just comparative there, and the es is getting added because we're showing that Wochenende is neuter. We see ein here, it's original, doesn't give us the gender, so we add it onto kürzer right here. Same thing can happen with superlative. You have one form that works when it's by itself, but then when it goes in front of a noun, then you have to add an adjective ending to it. So by itself, the phrase is a little bit different than just in English, like we add an st or an est. In German, you're going to actually say as a separate word, and then add sten to your adjective. And the same thing, if you have a root vowel of O, A, or U, you're going to add an umlaut to that. So zum Beispiel, teuer. Diese Stiefel sind am teuersten. So we see that and sten. Now, if it's in front of a noun, you're not going to have the at all. You're just going to add an st to the adjective, and then you're going to have your adjective ending added after that. And generally speaking, you're going to have an article in there, and that article is going to help determine, obviously, what that adjective ending will be. So, for instance, schön could be, aber sie sind die schönsten Stiefel, die ich im Leben gesehen habe. So die schönsten, we see the st there added to make it superlative, and because die here is plural and that's considered changed, we have an en ending as your adjective ending added on there. So there are actually a few forms that don't follow this exactly, and interestingly enough, a lot of these are also irregular in English. So diese irregulären Formen, gut does not become guter, just like good doesn't become gooder, and the goodest, we go gut, besser, am besten, or like die besten or something like that. Another word that does this is viel, so a lot, or much. We don't say much, mucher, and the muchest. We say, much, more, and the most. So auf Deutsch, viel mehr am meisten, or you could say like die meisten or something like that. Gern is gladly, and just like it's not gladlier, we say auf Deutsch gern lieber would be more gladly. Am liebsten would be the most gladly, or like die liebsten or something like that. And then sometimes there's just small changes in the spelling, and a lot of times that has to do with the way that you say it and making it easier to say or easier to distinguish from other words. So teuer for expensive becomes teurer for more expensive, because otherwise you'd end up with like teurer and it would just be really hard to say. And so then that goes to am teuersten or die teuersten or something like that. Nah for near becomes näher for nearer, and am nächsten for the nearest. And the interesting thing about that word is that am nächsten has two meanings. It also means the next. So the nearest and the next actually kind of are the same thing. Hoch for high becomes höher, and then am höchsten. And then a little side note here, hilfreiche Phrasen. When you are comparing things, if you want to say something is, bigger than, that would be als, größer als. Or if you want to say, like, as big as an elephant, so groß wie ein Elefant. So the words so and wie work like our as. So zum Beispiel, sein Hut ist größer als mein Hut, aber nicht so groß wie Jörgs Hut. And another little side note here, Achtung, whereas in English, sometimes we can't just add ER or EST and we have to say more or the most. In German, that never is the case. You can always, for all adjectives, add the ER or the ST or STEN to it to put it in the comparative or superlative forms. So for that reason, then you don't ever use mehr or am meisten with an adjective. Okay, so pause the video and try it out with these, and then press play and I will show you the answers. All right, so here are our answers. So looking through these, friendly, freundlich, so friendlier, freundlicher. The friendliest, am freundlichsten, there's your superlative. With this Nummer 1, it was not in front of a noun, so we didn't have to worry about any adjective endings. Aber mit Nummer 2, we do have it in front or preceding a noun, so we do have to also have an adjective ending. So we see here groß, größer, and größte, but then we have to add the endings. So einen is changed, so einen großen Hund. Again, einen is changed, so größeren Hund. And then den, also changed, so größten Hund. So we're seeing those en endings there because of the changed articles. Okay, here on Nummer 3, we also have it preceding nouns. So we have a lot more in the most. We see viel, mehr, and meist in there. But we also see adjective endings being added. So viele Sendungen, since we don't have an article, this is just showing us that it would be die for plural. Mehr is one of those exceptions that just doesn't get an adjective ending even when preceding a noun. And then die meisten here, die Sendungen, die is for plural, which is changed, so we see an en being added. Nummer 4, we also have adjectives preceding nouns, and we also see the comparative and superlative forms. So we see lang, länger, längst, but then we see the endings that get added. So ein here is original, not showing the gender, so es to show it. Again, ein, original, not showing gender, es to show it. And then das, original, but does show the gender, so we just put an e. And Nummer 5, when we're looking at this one, these are not preceding a noun, so they're pretty simple. Die Italienreise ist teuer, die Frankreich-Reise ist teurer, die Fiji-Reise ist am teuersten. Oops. Alright, das war es. So, danke für das Zuschauen und ich hoffe, dass Sie mein nächstes Video auch schauen. Grammatik-Wiederholung, Konjunktiv 2. Tschüss!